In this video, I will be analysing the opening sequence of the 2005 film The Amityville Horror, directed by Andrew Douglas. The majority of the sequence has a sepia tone placed upon it. This is done through the use of colour grading. This reflects the time period in which the sequence takes place, but also signifies that the scene is a flashback, thus clarifying to the audience that this sequence does not occur at the same time as the other events of the text. Another text that does this is the 1995 film While You Were Sleeping. The opening sequence depicts a flashback to main character Lucy's childhood that is all colour graded to have a sepia tone. The absence of colour also serves to fuel the audience's fear of the unknown, as they are unable to distinguish colours. Consequently, audiences will have feelings of apprehension towards the scene. There is very little in the way of coloured footage. Crime scene photographs that are cross-cut into this sequence not only provide a secondary perspective of the sequence, but also juxtaposition between themselves and the remainder of the text. In addition, these shots also have fade to white transitions in between them. This has been done to replicate the flash of a camera, providing further realism to the scene, reinforcing the fact that the text is to be based on a true story. In this shot, audiences are introduced to the exterior location in which the remainder of the film will take place. The shot is colour graded with a reasonably saturated blue hue. This emits a cold and eerie atmosphere, which not only reflects the dark themes of the opening sequence, but also suggests that this house will be associated with such feelings in the future. In the opening of the sequence, when the titles are shown, there is a J-cut. The audience can hear thunder. This could be considered pathetic fallacy, in which the weather within a scene reflects the overall mood. The use of this J-cut also helps to produce a tense mode of address, as it wraps the opening in mystery, especially when you consider the fact that there is no initial establishing shot. The only information provided to the audience in the first 18 seconds of a text is the fact that the text is based on a true story, a date, and an out-of-focus image of a man. The phrase "catch them, kill them" can be heard at this point in the sequence.
Catch them.
This audio has been enhanced using echoing in order to make the voice sound more spectral and ghost-like. This is paired with a shot of the character's eyes that have been manipulated using visual effects to display a television screen that has been previously seen in the scene. This suggests to audiences that perhaps the character has an obsession with the device, or that something supernatural is using this appliance in order to communicate or possess the character. Upon seeing Ronnie go to shoot Jodie, there is an L-cut. The audience sees the gun flare from outside the house, while the noise that the gun gave off can be heard. This implies the death of the young girl without explicitly showing it. I believe this may have been done specifically for this character, as she is the only character that the audience is able to interact with before her death, thus allowing an empathetic connection to be formed between the audience and the young girl. Cross-cutting between the character and her reactions to the events taking place in the shots of Ronnie performing the acts could be considered to use contrast, one of 5 relational editing techniques created by Pudovkin. This is because children are stereotypically seen as an embodiment of innocence. When archetypes such as these are placed into sequences that also contain violent acts such as murder, it creates a stark contrast. contrast. This also heightens the audience's fear for the young girl. They perceive her to be a small helpless child whose life is inevitably going to come to an end. The editing within the scene has very little in the way of rhythm. Here is an example. This specific sequence within the scene has no rhythm, as it utilises shots of varying length. This unevenness continues until the point at which DeFeo walks out of the basement. The irregularity of shot length in the beginning of the scene could potentially be used as a visual representation of the frantic and troubled mental state of DeFeo. The more rhythmic shots create a faster but even pace to the sequence, suggesting to the audience that at some point soon something will happen, as the pace is visibly increased, a convention quite common within the horror genre. The scene utilises various transitions, none however more prominent than the use of fades both to and from black, which are used to excess within the scene. Most commonly, such transitions are used to suggest that a scene has either begun or ended, a convention that this sequence follows. The sequence also contains these transitions for the purpose of replicating the darkness that precedes flashes of lightning, whilst on occasion showing the progression of time, such as when DeFeo reaches the top of a staircase, in which there is an implicit jump in time signified to the audience by the slight extension in duration of the fade. This is done in order to keep the pace of the film steady. This also means that the editing within the scene is hidden by the darkness that these transitions create, giving the sequence a more continuous flow. It also means that audiences don't know what they'll see next, making them more on edge while watching the scene. In the opening of the sequence, dissolves are used in order to further distort the shots of DeFeo. These shots are already out of focus, and by placing dissolves between them, it makes the character's movement seem more haunting and ghostly. This also helps to hide information from the audiences, creating a sense of enigma. Lack of detail creates anxious responses from audiences. The sequence uses cuts and actions on many occasions to create a continuous flow of movement. This means the scene's continuity is not compromised, and also helps to hide edits, making them less obvious to the audience. This is effective in immersing the audience further in the scene. Examples of these cuts on actions are this moment when Ronnie loads the gun that he is holding, and the moment that he turns to look at the clock as it changes time. This shot also happens to use an eyeline match to further aid continuity.